Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. This is the point where we get into an epic sword fight. I help some other dude get married. And then I gotta go hang out with a giant, so, not all bad. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is roles in teams. Now, last week we discussed very in depth how beneficial teams are to the problem-solving process. What we're going to be doing this lecture is talking about how important roles are when we discuss teams. Now, what is a role? It's not R-O-L-L, or the delicious kind. It's not that kind of a role. A role is like a part that you play. It gives you a title. When it comes to roles, at the end of the day, role titles are arbitrary. Well, what does that mean? It means I can name myself the official, executive, super exemplary taster of all roles, and I could eat my roles deliciously, and it just... What is a super executive? Who knows? The title itself is arbitrary. Okay? Now, there are a lot of standardized titles that are recognized in the business community: vice president, president, manager, project manager, team leader. Those are all roles that are fairly well recognized. But there are also a lot of titles that are not industry standard. One of the fun jokes in industry is, I got a promotion. I'm now X and X and X and X. And what does it mean? Who knows? Who cares? The title itself is arbitrary. Usually they try to get the title to somewhat describe what the role is. But what is a role? Well, a role is effectively a set of tasks that you are expected to complete. It has a title that comes along with it that kind of describes it. As I said, it's arbitrary. But you are expected to complete a certain set of tasks. A role is effectively an expectation. Okay, that expectation comes with tasks, comes with professionalism standards. When you are completing a role, you are expected to behave a certain way. Okay? If your role is executive vice president, as a part of your role, you may be expected to wear a suit, jacket, and tie every day. That is a valid expectation of that role. When you take a position in a company, you're taking on a role that may come with professionalism standards. That may also include communication. Who do you report to? When? How often? What do you communicate with them? This may include things like, what is it that you're going to ultimately be doing in your job? Professionalism standards are necessary in every role. Aside from just tasks. When it comes to tasks that are assigned to a role, this is, what is your expertise going to be? What are you expected to know and understand? And how are you expected to relay that knowledge and information to better the team that you're working as a part of? Okay, so it comes with tasks, comes with professionalism standards, and oftentimes a role also comes with some protections. And here, this is where I think a lot of people, when you talk about when you're working in a team, every team member has rights, whether that's intellectual rights, property rights, whether it's stake in the company, profits. Everybody should have rights, and this is a problem, because this is what you, as the person playing this role, should be able to expect out of the rest of your team / out of the person who's hiring you, employing you, managing you, etc. Okay, everyone is given this, but what are they? Well, this is where we start diving into legal jargon really quickly, because ultimately a role, in order to provide these rights and protections and have it be concrete, you need some kind of a binding document that says, here's what you're going to do, here's the standards that you're expected to apply by, and here are your rights as this employee. This is where you require a proper contract. Okay, contract is kind of a gross word, but this is not something we're going to be doing for this project, but it is something that we are going to be doing for the next project. I'm kind of introducing it after we started working on this project, so I'm not going to go back and be like, all right, let's define those roles now. But no, when we go into the second project, it's important to understand that you have rights and protections that are given to you. And if a team member fails to live up to their rights, fails to live up to their tasks, or fails to live up to their professionalism standards, they lose their abilities, and sometimes this is even put into the contract. If a person fails to do X, they may be fired, they may be removed from the team, they may lose credit, all of these fun things that can be extraordinarily legal very quickly. You can have contracts that are a page long, you can have contracts that are half page long, and a lot of that then, the understandings of, the shorter the contract is, a lot of the understandings become handshake agreements. If you're not going to show up, you're not getting paid. That's the contract. Longer contracts tend to be where you get into more specific work, more heavily regulated work. This may be something where, like, a head coach of a football team has to sign a very extensive contract that has clauses in there of if you leave, and if you make a national championship, and if you do this, or if you're caught in a scandal, or if you badmouth the university, or if your professionalism conduct isn't, etc., etc. There are clauses in there that can actually cause a person to lose money, lose their job, all these fun things. So contracts can get to be 20, sometimes 50 pages long. The higher the expectations are on a person, the more critical that role is. So you have that really broad spectrum between a handshake agreement, which a handshake agreement is, I'm not going to say explicitly what I expect out of you, but we kind of both know, so just keep doing that. Handshake agreements occasionally are upheld in court if you were to file a lawsuit, or if they were to file a lawsuit against you. Occasionally it is like, oh, well, all of our employees do this, and this is what the norm is, and this employee was doing elsewise. Sometimes that can be upheld, but there's no guarantee, which is why these very detailed, very long contracts are sometimes necessary. We won't play around with contracts until Project 2, but it is important to know that that is what the purpose of a contract is. A contract establishes roles formally. So as we go and talk about teams, why are roles necessary? Well, as we talked about last time, diversification of individual tasks allow for specialization. Means one person can become an expert in a certain topic and is required to do X task. If nobody else is doing that same task, there's no argument, there's no need for discussion, they just do it. And now all these roles may come together and they may have a conversation about how to complete a certain task that they're all working on collaboratively. That's fine. And part of that collaboration and discussion and argumentation, that may be a piece of the role as a whole. But at the end of the day, your role itself, each individual role, should be able to execute that task really without having somebody doing the same thing as them simultaneously, the exact same thing. You know, you may have two guys out there that are like, hey, let's go pour concrete. Okay, if you have two guys out there pouring concrete, well, only one guy needs to manage the chute. Another guy needs to actually manage the pour. So it's something where you don't have to have two people trying to put their hands in the same place at the same time. That becomes counterproductive. There's too many hands in one place. You know, the old adage, too many chefs spoil the soup. You want to make sure people are far enough apart doing unique items that keeps them busy. And this is what roles do. Now, in every group, somebody has to establish these roles. Okay? So how are roles established? Well, usually it's company policy. Meaning that this comes straight out of the administration of the industry company. Okay, so if an executive level team is developed, the roles would be defined directly by the president. Say, I need this individual, this. Okay, that's rare, but it does happen, particularly for high interest or very high yielding stuff where things have to be very confidential. In an executive committee of people, a lot of the communication doesn't have to be shared with the rest of the company. Now, lower level stuff, you know, if this is assigned where, you know, this is, let's say you're working at a civil engineering firm, you get assigned a project, that project goes to a person who is assigned to be the project manager. Okay. Okay. The project manager is assigned first. Usually it is the project manager's job to locate individuals who will work with them to complete this project. Okay? So they have to find people who are going to work with them. Sometimes they have to identify the scope and say, oh, well, for some of these roles, we're going to hire an outside contractor. The project manager has to be aware of who all is going to be needed to solve this project. It doesn't have to all be entirely people from inside the institution. Sometimes it can be, hey, we're going to work with this contractor. Hey, we're going to work with this government official. Hey, we're going to be working with this research team. Hey, we're going to be working with this university team. But the project manager is the one who has to understand who it is that they're actually communicating to. So you have to understand your personnel. That is the most important thing. Second is allocate your resources. Okay, I have a team of personnel who I need somebody who's going to be doing drawing. I need somebody who's going to be doing this task. I need somebody who's going to be cleaning up afterwards. I need somebody is going to maintain the quality assurance. They're going to test the products to make sure that they're coming in. They're going to test the incoming raw materials before we manufacture something to make sure that it's up to standards. What you're doing there is you start allocating your resources. You say, okay, in order to locate personnel, I need to know exactly what roles are necessary to complete this. To allocate your resources, you have to understand how the problem will be solved and all of the sub-steps of the smaller problems that are needed to solve the bigger problem. Okay? So you have to be able to see the big picture, but you also have to then be able to see the itty-bitty picture. And you have to be able to step from the small picture to the big picture as you allocate these resources, as you identify what needs to be done. So for the project manager, they have a big task usually, and usually they're the ones who set up the groups. Their job is to understand what all needs to be done, pick the people to do it, and assign roles to those people to make sure it gets done. Okay? If the project is falling behind, management talks to this person. And we'll go to this person and say, you're being slow. You're not working fast enough. Give me an update on the progress. Give me an update on this. And the project manager really has to know everything. But the thing that the project manager does not need to know how to do is the specifics of how each individual task is done. Okay, that's micromanaging. A good project manager knows how to get people to do what is needed to get the right outcome. But the project manager themselves does not actually need to know what the person is doing. Let me kind of specify that a little bit. Let's say I'm working with a particle physicist who is able to develop nuclear material for a certain task. Okay, I need to understand what nuclear material is. I don't need to understand the math calculations this particle physicist is working on. I don't need to understand the very foundations of what is required in order for them to be able to split atoms or join molecules together or understand molecular flows. I don't need to know that. What I need to know is how can I get them to output the necessary information that is needed by the team. I don't even need to know the information they're going to provide. I just need to know how they can fit into the team and what they need to be doing so that I can guide them. I may not be able to answer every one of their questions, but I can tell them what they should be doing, okay? And sometimes it's just on them to figure it out. Because you're the expert in that area, I'm going to leave that on you. You figure it out. I'm not going to figure it out for you and tell you how to do it. That becomes micromanaging. So the project manager in an engineering team ends up doing a lot less engineering than the other engineers. They'll have a group of engineers underneath them who they tell them what to do, but they don't actually need to know what the engineering is that's being done. Project managers can be business majors, they can be physics majors. They don't need to know the engineering. They need to know the team. They need to know the overall concept of what's being done, and they need to be able to divvy up the tasks that are needed to be done into individual people in such a way that the loads are equal on each person. Okay? So project manager establishes the roles, but they have to do it by getting the vision. Okay? Kinds of roles that are present in a team. There's a huge section on this in the book. It goes through a number of different roles that are necessary. So I'm going to only hit a couple of these, and this is going to be short. First of all, you have the project manager. Now, they may establish design engineers whose job it is to input information about what's needed and output 2D models, 3D models, prototypes, anything that could be used to solve the problem. That's kind of the purpose of a design engineer. You may have a research engineer. A research engineer will take information, input what is needed by the company, and they will output information. And this may include information on products, it may include information on materials, on workflows, distributions. You may have research engineers who are doing research on whether or not it's possible to even build a device, like a touchscreen display. Is it possible? That would be put into the research engineer. Sometimes research engineers and design engineers work very closely together, which is why it's called overall R&D. And some companies will, in their title, just specify we need an R&D engineer. Somebody who's capable of doing both. But they can be separated into distinctly different tasks, which is why I provided them to you as different tasks. You will sometimes have manufacturing engineers, and their job is to take a product that maybe comes out of a design engineer, a 2D or 3D product, a prototype, and turn it into a replicable, repeatable product that could be just popped out of an assembly line. Okay, manufacturing engineers are involved in, they don't get to do a whole lot of design, but they get to do the grunt work of all the problem solving, the mechanics of taking a design that exists and making it something that can be built easily by a production facility. It takes a lot of knowledge about the production facility to be a manufacturing engineer. Manufacturing engineers are in very high demand out in the world. You want a job as a manufacturing engineer and you understand the manufacturing processes, you could go to most places. They have a critical set of problem-solving skills that even the rest of these people don't have. I end up working a lot with technicians too. They kind of interface between design engineers and technicians. You'll have somebody who's involved sometimes in sales. You'll have somebody who's involved in marketing and in fundraising. Sometimes you have people who they have to go out and specifically get a product to move from the facility to somebody else's inventory. Exchange of resources, somebody gets paid. Okay, sales, advertising, all of that. You'll have those types of roles. You'll have, you could really name, because the titles are arbitrary, you could really name any role and somebody could fill it as long as it's providing a task that is beneficial overall to what the company is wanting. Okay, the company defines the direction. The company defines what needs to be done. And it is the roles that are created by the project manager that are needed to fill the task to satisfy the company's superiors. This could be a manager, it could be a president, vice president, it could be a committee, this could be a board somewhere, this could be a government body. It could be a lot of different things. So there are a lot of different roles that are present. This is only a very small list, but the book even has a much larger list than this. Once you have identified roles, once they are present in a contract, once they've been given their contract, the expectation is you start at the start date listed on the contract. You will stop the stop date listed on the contract unless it's indefinitely renewed. A position like mine, my contract has to be renewed annually because that's how academia works. The university reserves the right to terminate my contract while I am an untenured professor for many reasons. Let's hope none of them are watching my YouTube lectures. But some positions, the role of the contract states that they are employed indefinitely until terms of the contract are violated or until a decision is made to downsize, that sort of thing. And they may have an indefinite contract such that you don't have to get renewed every year. A lot of companies will be like that. Some companies will have annual renewals. Some companies will have contract renewals every 6 weeks. I've seen that. It's ridiculous, but it happens. Specifically some government bodies. It's gross. Engineers typically don't get put on those short-term contracts because it is kind of an insult. It takes more than 6 weeks to hire an engineer usually. So you're on a 6-week contract renewal. An engineer would just say, oh heck no, I don't care how much you're paying me. It's not worth it if I don't know whether or not I'm going to be finding a job in 6 weeks. So yes, that's all specified in the contract. You get the people to work for you, you get them to do their tasks, all of this, great. What happens when there's a problem in the team where the roles kind of fall apart, there's a lack of professionalism, or there's a lack of communication? Well, it does happen a lot. All of you have probably worked on group projects where you ended up doing a majority of the work. Okay? This is where we talk about the idea of a team health check. Okay, a team health check is often necessary for a project manager to employ just to see how well the team is working together. The project manager oftentimes knows how well the team is working together, but it's nice to hear from the actual team members themselves to have some input on how the process is going. In a team health check, you'll have individuals submit information on other team members, on their individual tasks. Is there a task that they're struggling with? If you're struggling with a task, your other team members may feel like you are not yourself living up to your role, when in reality it's just overwhelming. There was no idea for the project manager how much work this particular role was going to have, and the workload is unbalanced. So in a team health check, you will be discussing tasks. Are you able to meet them? Is this something that's sufficient? And in the same vein, you're going to be talking about progress. Have you made progress on this? What is inhibiting you? What do you need to continue to succeed? And sometimes it's also used as a way to sometimes give feedback on management itself. Is there anything you're unclear about? Do you know about the deadlines? Do you know what's expected of you? Do you know what's being asked of you? Are the roles arranged correctly so that you know who you need to report to? Okay, team health checks, if the project manager is good, a good team health check will give them the ability to adjust roles. In most contracts, if the role is adjusted slightly, that's included in the contract as this may be subject to vary based on the team needs, etc., etc. But sometimes this may warrant filing completely new sets of contracts to people and say, okay, I know you were doing this, we need this. It may involve a brand new hiring process. Team health checks can bring about a lot of problems for a team because sometimes this says we're really deficient somewhere. But the goal of this is to kind of bring it back into a homeostatic mechanism where it's working as a good team dynamic again. Everybody's productive, everyone is happy. In a team where everyone participates, there are very few things that a team where everyone's working together where they can't accomplish. You get a team of people who don't know a whole lot about a subject. You set them with good roles, good expectations. You set them on anything, they can teach themselves. They can learn through the process. They can make the trial and error needed to find some of this information in order to get from one place to a final solution. It may take more time if you don't have a very qualified team. But any team can really do anything. And I firmly believe that. There are probably people, I know that there are many people who disagree with that, but I think a good team that is well organized could do anything that's real. Okay? Good team health checks are necessary though. Not every team does this. We will be doing this as part of the second project. We're going to have one team health check in the middle of the second project to see, is everyone's roles, are they being met? Is everybody happy? Is everybody participating? Is everybody showing up to the meetings? Is everybody communicating? Is everybody following the professionalism standards that were given to them? Okay, so that's all the teamwork information for this week. This information will show up on the quiz, so be prepared for that for next week's quiz. I am now going to stop this live stream. I have 0 viewers, so none of you are watching me live. Jerks. It's okay, I threw a whiteboard marker on the ground and nobody chastised me. But we're going to be moving on into talking about AutoCAD now. So the next 2 lectures are going to be very specific to how to make AutoCAD work. And you'll see me there, hopefully. Please watch videos.